Have you ever been suspected of a serious crime that you didn't commit? If not, then that's good because I had to face it. I tried not to look for problems at all and I was extremely calm and inconspicuous, but by some coincidence, all the problems collapsed on me at one point and I had to clean up this mess. I'm Parker and my wife Bonnie, and we have been together for 5 eventful years. We crossed paths at a week before Christmas. I was in my final year at high school. I was really keen to get laid, and Bonnie was proving to be a challenge. Looking back, I wish I'd accepted defeat. Instead, I kept trying to win her over until graduation. That was when my downfall began. I wanted to get my act together as soon as possible, but everything turned out quite the opposite. After a night out together, we discovered that she was pregnant. 2 months later, we had to think about the available honeymoon options for mothers-to-be. I've always been interested in computer programming and have taken several courses in it. I've taken college-level courses during my later years in high school. I'm very comfortable with SQL and can easily create queries, views, functions, and stored procedures. I can also create triggers for complex data scenarios. I've developed my skills a lot using the tools and resources available online. The great thing is that I can work from anywhere with Wi-Fi. I'm currently under house arrest for the next 10 months, which is a bit of a hassle given that I don't have to leave the house. It's also a bit of a shock after 15 years without any trouble. I was in a nightclub and things got physical. I'm not exactly a big guy, but I'm under house arrest for the next 10 months. It was the first altercation I've had since grade school, and it was more of an ambush. Thankfully, I managed to avoid felony charges. After Bonnie gave birth to our son, Adam, we had a relatively calm 6 months. I held a programming job that paid well, working in an office with about a dozen other programmers. Bonnie and I engaged in adult activities despite being only 20 and rather inexperienced in many aspects of life. Bonnie insists she took her birth control pills. Pills, but here we are in the doctor's office, looking at a sonogram showing 3 sets of tiny hands and feet. Everything went well. Bivin came first, followed shortly by Connie, and finally Danny completed our family. I'm seriously thinking about getting sterilized before we expand our family further. I'm dealing with a stubborn toddler in his terrible twos who feels neglected compared to his sisters. His sisters can be a bit of a handful, so one Saturday night we had Bonnie's parents babysit. I went out for dinner at a franchise restaurant before heading to a nightclub with a live band. It was our first time in a bar since turning 21. The place was pretty crowded, which made it tricky to chat and dance. We ended up going to a different nightclub that didn't have a live band but had a jukebox and a dance floor. After a few dances and some drinks, we found ourselves seated near 3 other couples, all strangers. The men chatted about sports while the women discussed who knows what. Some other men approached our table and invited the ladies to dance. 2 agreed while 2 declined. I observed Bonnie joining a man on the dance floor after a couple of lively dances. After a few dances, she returned to our table. A different man asked her to dance, and she glanced at me, who nodded my approval. They danced together for a few fast and slow songs, and it appeared there was no inappropriate behavior on the dance floor. I excused myself to visit the restroom, and upon my return, Bonnie was nowhere to be found. Despite my efforts to search, she remained elusive. I stepped outside and observed a man. He was touching her inappropriately, with his right hand between her legs outside her jeans, and she seemed to be reciprocating with her hands around his neck. Their faces were close together, and I quickly stepped in and delivered a kick to the side of his leg just below the knee, which made him cry out in pain. I then pressed his blonde hair was pressed against the concrete block building, which caused him to collapse. I delivered a few more kicks to stop him from misbehaving. My final kick seemed to have a significant impact, possibly affecting his reproductive organs. Security intervened shortly after, and I turned to Bonnie. I demanded to know what she was doing, but she responded incoherently, leaving me baffled about how she managed to return home. I was wondering all night whether being drunk was the reason for such inappropriate behavior. Our group found ourselves in a holding cell with 6 of us in total. After my parents posted bail for me and brought me home, Bonnie kept apologizing. However, I eventually confronted her, saying that apologies don't clarify the motives behind your actions when you're ready to explain that. I'm all ears, but please don't speak until I'm ready. Despite my request, no explanation was ever provided. Sexual intimacy declined as the tension in the household persisted. Bonnie made efforts to avoid conflicts despite our financial constraints, limiting us to a novice lawyer. I doubted that spending more on a top-tier attorney would have yielded better results. I received a sentence of 11 months. I was under house arrest, which meant I couldn't leave my home except for medical emergencies or transportation by ambulance or police car. This was a lot for Bonnie to cope with, so she started socializing with neighbors over coffee. I found it helpful to spend time with my family. The next challenge in our marriage came less than a month into my confinement. Parker, I'll be direct. I can't bear sitting since that incident where I was groped. I've been reconsidering my choices. I met someone at the supermarket and I'm going out on a date with him on Friday night. I had intended to remain calm and speak sensibly, but my reaction was quite different. Bonnie was gripped by fear and sought refuge in our bedroom and secured the door. I explicitly conveyed that our marriage would be terminated if she persisted in her retreat to the bedroom. I told her that if she went to bed, our marriage would be over. I called her parents, who agreed to come over. Bonnie's parents, Roger and Edith, and mine have a lot in common. My mother, Julie, and Edith are both very nurturing. Julie likes to wear trousers, but Edith only wears floor-length dresses. My father Mark and Roger have similar styles, with fashionable beards and receding hairlines. I told the group about Bonnie's issues, despite Edith's attempts to persuade her to come out. The situation quickly escalated, with heated discussions. Bonnie abruptly ended the evening with a stark warning. She said that if anyone ever wanted to see if you want to see your grandchildren again, you'll stay out of my personal life. Our parents gave us a few words of sympathy as they left, and Bonnie went back to the bedroom and locked the door. I spent another night on the couch. Bonnie was hardly home for the rest of the week, and I didn't know where she was. I found myself Mark and I had 4 kids to feed and look after, and Mark had arranged to see a divorce lawyer. On Friday evening just past 6, Bonnie said she wasn't sure if she'd return that night. I pleaded with her not to leave, but she drove away, which meant the end of our marriage. At 12 a.m., my phone rang, but I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail upon hearing the message tone. I decided to listen to the voicemail. Mr. Douglas, this is Abby from University Hospital. Your wife, Bonnie, has been admitted, but she's not in danger. She'll need surgery tomorrow. I wanted to inform you that my number is part 1 felt a sense of justice, but I couldn't leave the house. Had he harmed her? Was she in a car accident? Was he behind the wheel? I couldn't sleep, thinking about these questions. The hungry cries of the 3 little hens only added to my exhaustion. By the time the roosters announced dawn at 8, I was drained. At 12 a.m., the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. I went to the front door and saw a sleek car parked behind mine. The man at the door showed me his badge and asked, "Is Parker Douglas here?" That would be me. How can I help you? Detective John, isn't it? Call me John. Are you aware that your wife is in the hospital? Yes, I am. Is that all? You have no idea where I was around midnight last night. If you bothered to check, you'd already have the answer. I replied, gesturing toward my ankle monitor. Oh, my apologies. I should have done some research. Do you know anyone who might want to harm your wife? No one immediately comes to mind. The hospital left a message about her being there. That's all I know for sure. Parker, I have to say, your behavior is rather strange. Care to elaborate? She decided to end our marriage last night and went on a date. I somewhat hope her companion assaulted her severely. His expression turned grave. Nothing of that sort, at least not as far as I know. As she was leaving a motel room, she was physically attacked, but there's no indication of sexual assault. Her face is badly bruised, but the most severe damage is to her left hand. Each finger was broken with a hammer. They left a message on her face with a black marker. Despite the grim news, I found myself smiling. I'm not involved in this at all, John. If you'll excuse me, I hear the kids are hungry again. I thought about reaching out to Bonnie's parents to tell them what I know, but I decided Bonnie should speak to them herself. It was just another day of looking after the kids. The kids were feeding, bathing, changing nappies, and so on. I only had time for 10 minutes of TV, and my programming projects were piling up, so I knew I'd be coding late into the night. Just after 4 p.m., my phone rang with Bonnie's name on the caller ID. I decided to let it go to voicemail. I don't know if you're aware, but I was assaulted last night. They performed surgery on my left hand today. All my fingers and thumb are broken and my entire hand is in a cast. Could you arrange for someone to drop off a change of clothes for when I come home tomorrow? How are my babies? Please give me a call. It's as if I'm her caretaker. Screw you, bitch. Put on your provocative outfit and go home during dinner. My favorite detective showed up at my doorstep. Mr. Douglas, I have a search warrant for your residence. John, no need to be so formal. Please come in. Would you like something to drink? No, thank you. I remained silent. As they took my computers and did a thorough search, John's assistant exchanged glances, indicating they found nothing. John, what's going on? There's been a related assault. It seems to be a case of sexual retaliation. We've connected this individual to your wife. His genitals were mutilated in the same way. I saw a message written on his face in black marker. I winced. Mutilated? That must be painful. It's similar to Bonnie's assault. I had no involvement in this whatsoever. Well, it seems like karma's caught up with him. Best of luck with your investigation. Oh, and since you're confiscating my phone, could you please call my dad for me? John called Mark and asked him to lend me a laptop and get me a cheap disposable phone. My parents arrived with dinner, and I filled them in on what I knew. My mom voiced what I was already thinking. She deserves it. Bonnie kept sending additional messages, portraying herself as the victim of a random incident. Rather than showing any regret for ending the marriage, she chose to send me messages on Sunday around noon. She arrived at our house in a car, and the children were delighted to see her. I decided to stay in other parts of the house for the rest of the day. Despite her struggles with the children, I ignored her requests for assistance. If you're unable to handle something, retreat to the bedroom and I'll take care of it. Parker, please don't act this way. We're still married. I'll be in this cast for at least 10 weeks, so I need your cooperation. I disregarded her and I went into my office and put on some music to block out the noise. I managed to get some work done. I smelled dinner cooking and then I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. Bonnie had passed me a note saying that the kids needed baths. I couldn't risk getting my cast wet, so I'll be in the bedroom when John gets back. I'll leave my computers on. And phone. He told me that my browser history and cell phone activity were of no use to them. It was satisfying to be able to say I told you so. Bonnie asked John about recovering her rings. She had been wearing my wedding band along with her maternal grandmother's wedding band. Apparently, the attackers he said he'd removed them before injuring her fingers. I asked if he'd found or turned in any rings and he said no. We were at an impasse. Bonnie tried to exert influence and I stood firm until the bedroom door closed. She tried to sway my determination daily, but I remained resolute. She came out of the bedroom while I was on the phone to Edith. She said she had plans for another date, but she wasn't sure if she'd be back that night. I was shocked. I realized I needed a divorce, and I didn't want to stay married just to be around the kids. I'd missed them, but I felt I'd reached my limit. I reached my breaking point. Edith agreed to take the kids to their doctor's appointment on Friday and expressed her dismay regarding Bonnie's actions while offering moral support. I was too overwhelmed to think rationally. Fortunately, the comforting presence of my children offered a glimmer of hope for the future. I was fast asleep when my phone suddenly rang. I saw that it was an unfamiliar number, so I let it go to voicemail. Later, I heard a notification tone, so I listened to the message. It was from Mr. Douglas. He said that his wife, Bonnie, had been admitted to the hospital. He was reaching out as a courtesy, and he gave me a number to call. Was this a repeat of our first encounter? I doubt it. She was with the same person. Injuries like those don't heal so quickly. Perhaps this person had assaulted her. It was disturbing to realize that part of me wished for her demise due to her injuries. I know it's twisted, but my life is in utter chaos right now. I'm dealing with a lot at the moment. After a quick sip of whiskey, I was fast asleep. When John arrived, I was already up and about, welcoming him with a coffee in hand. "Good to see you again," I said. "What's the latest?" I handed him the copy of the search warrant. Same pattern: assaulted, leaving the motel, broken fingers, and another message on her face. Another victim with mutilated genitals. "You're evasive, but we're determined to catch you. Give it your best shot, John. I'm just as clueless as you are." Same message on the man. Yes, on Bonnie. A second message. "You're a slow learner. Feed her next. You mentioned broken fingers. Right hand this time. That's. Yes, she'll be out of action for a while. It's a shame, but I can't help her before they took my phones. I called my dad to ask if I could use his laptop again. I also said I needed another disposable phone. Luckily, all my work is stored in the cloud. It was a smart move to back up everything and put it on a thumb drive. I gave them to my dad to keep safe. On Friday at 4 p.m., I got a call from Bonnie. It wasn't Bonnie herself, but someone calling on her behalf. She sounded upset and worried about how she would manage. She kept complaining, even though I didn't care. Maybe her parents will help her out at dinner. Julie stopped by to watch the kids. When my phone rang, she saw it was Bonnie. She answered and turned on the speakerphone. "Parker, you need to help me." "Bonnie, this is Julie." "Don't expect Parker or anyone else he knows to help you. Julie, I told you to stay out of my personal business. Put Parker on the line." She offered me the phone, but I said no, so she ended the call on Sunday. Bonnie tried to contact me again, but I let it go to voicemail. "Parker, if I get back to the office, I'd appreciate your support. Give me a call." I didn't call back because I don't know where she is. John returned my electronics a few days earlier than before with the same warning that they still suspect my involvement. On Monday morning, I was surprised by an unexpected visitor, Edith. "What brings you here?" "I'm here to help you with the kids." "What about Bonnie? Isn't she staying with you?" "No, she asked us to mind our own business, so we've stopped answering her calls. We haven't seen her since the night she told us to stay out of her life. I think she's staying with one of her friends. It might be someone from her wedding party who called on Bonnie's behalf a few times. We've told them we don't consider her our daughter anymore. If you're not busy, please come in. Would you like black coffee? Where are my kids?" Edith stayed out of my way and spent the whole day looking after them. When the kids were asleep, she took care of the laundry and did some general cleaning. I thought it was just for one day, but she's been back every day since. Some days Roger joins her. I managed to catch up on my work projects and even had time for a guilt-free nap. I haven't heard from Bonnie, and Edith says she hasn't either. My attorney suggested it was a good time to start divorce proceedings since Bonnie has effectively abandoned the kids. I can structure my day as if I were still married. The previously chaotic days have settled down. I'm trying to settle into a more tranquil rhythm, but this newfound calmness allows ample time for me to contemplate my situation with Bonnie and nurture my resentment. My mother visits several times a week, too, and the grandparents have a much better relationship than Bonnie and I ever did. When the kids have a medical appointment, one of the grandparents usually take them. Once the paperwork was ready, Bonnie was served. Her voicemails were full of explicit language and threats. I decided not to delete them, thinking they might help the court understand Bonnie's behavior better, given my limited mobility. The lawyers' meetings took place. I thought it would be good to have the hearing in my front yard, so that Bonnie would feel ashamed. They were determined to argue for Bonnie's custody rights and to secure child support from me. We made similar claims against Bonnie, asserting that she needed to find employment to contribute to child support, given her skill set. It seemed unlikely that she could manage this without resorting to earnings from escort services. The initial court hearing didn't go well for Bonnie. My lawyer portrayed me as the sole provider for the children over the past 8 weeks. They countered this by stating that due to her injuries, Bonnie couldn't use her hands when questioned. My lawyer presented depositions from Bonnie's 2 lovers with injured genitalia. I said I didn't approve of Bonnie engaging in extramarital affairs. Bonnie and her legal team huddled for several minutes. Their final move was presenting a piece of paper containing a cautionary message. My lawyer said the note could have been made up just to make things look dramatic. Bonnie's lawyers didn't have any proof about where the note came from. I wasn't involved in making it. Now we're waiting to see what happens next. The court asked Bonnie for more documents about leaving the kids. My lawyer said this is good for our case. After the left-hand cast was removed, Bonnie went back to the house. She found all her stuff in the laundry room, which made her really angry. My lawyer said I should let her back in, or it would look bad. Despite my hope that the children would reject Bonnie, they didn't. While holding Connie, she tried a different approach. Parker, what do I need to do to move past this? I still love you and I believe you love me too. I'm sorry for hurting you. I was immature, but I've grown a lot in the past 3 months. Bonnie, you're wrong. I don't love you anymore. The sooner I can get you out of my life, the better. I'm not leaving. You'll still have to deal with me when you visit your children. I was getting really frustrated, so I went to my office. Our upcoming court date was coming up. Bonnie was asleep on the couch, and we kept avoiding each other, pretty much like before, when Bonnie had only one working hand. I took care of things when Bonnie was stuck in a room while our case was being heard. She seemed happy to see her parents there, even though she hadn't seen them since the argument before her first. At the court appearance, she waved at them, but they ignored her. When my attorney asked Edith to come to the stand, her demeanor changed. Edith, can I call you that? Yes, Bonnie is your daughter. Is that why we're disowning her? She's promiscuous and unfit to raise my grandchildren. Parker is more than capable of caring for them. While Bonnie was out of action, Parker was at home looking after the kids. I won't let my precious angels grow up thinking that promiscuity is an acceptable lifestyle choice. Is Parker currently under house arrest? Yes, but he assaulted someone he thought was hurting Bonnie. It turned out she was also promiscuous that night. No further questions, Your Honor. Bonnie's lawyer decided not to cross-examine, and there were celebrations when I was granted custody and Bonnie was ordered to provide child support. I wasn't entitled to alimony because I was already covering all the housing costs. When my lawyer presented the recorded threatening voicemails, the judge ruled that the initial 3 months of visitation must be supervised. I thought I'd feel elated as a liberated man, but I felt a mix of melancholy and a touch of sadness instead. I was relieved to find that not much had changed back at the house. Edith visited every day and she and Julie took charge of my romantic life. I made it clear that finding a romantic partner wasn't a priority, but that was until one Saturday morning when Carmen showed up at my doorstep. Edith had invited her over to help with the kids. She had a son, just a week older than Adam, her late husband. He died in a car accident when she was 5 months pregnant. She was 2 years older than me and worked in customer support for an insurance agency. It was clear to everyone that this was a setup, but I didn't object while the kids slept. Carmen and I sat at the kitchen table and talked. I shared the story of my house arrest, and she told me about her late husband. Just as I was about to tell her about Bonnie, there was a knock on the front door. We sat at the kitchen table and talked. I told her about my house arrest and she told me about her late husband. Just as I was about to tell her about Bonnie, there was a knock on the front door. Bonnie, good to see you. The kids are asleep now. I assume the lady with you is overseeing today? Yes, this is Margot Hanson. I greeted Margot. Edith shook my hand and checked her credentials as she left through the back door. I welcomed Margot and Bonnie inside. This is Carmen, a good friend of mine. Her son Chad is asleep with Adam. Bonnie's gaze towards Carmen could have caused damage if it were possible. Carmen, however, she kept a big smile on her face and said hello to Bonnie in a soft voice. Nice to meet you, Bonnie. I'm Bonnie Rouse, and these are my kids. While I take Carmen to the door, would you like me to bring dinner tonight? We're close friends, after all. As I spent time with Carmen, everyone watched her drive off 4 hours later as Bonnie and Margot left at the end of their visit. I was excited at the thought of having dinner with a woman for the first time in 6 months after feeding the kids. As the kids were getting ready for bed, I quickly showered, shaved, and put on a bit of aftershave. I picked out a nice shirt and clean jeans while Bevan was changing his nappy. The doorbell rang and it was Carmen. She changed clothes too and helped me with the boys while they were playing. The casserole she'd brought was we chatted until almost midnight, which I was really grateful for. Carmen wasn't just a passive listener, she encouraged me to explore the thoughts and emotions surrounding Bonnie's mistreatment of me. I had to use all my powers of persuasion to convince her of my innocence regarding the assaults. Persuasion, I'm not sure if she truly believes me, but it's the truth. Close to midnight, she hugged a drowsy Chad and left. I asked her to meet up again, and she said yes. Our goodnight kiss was much more passionate than the earlier peck. I didn't think I needed female companionship, but I spent the entire night thinking about her. I spent the whole night tossing and turning, thinking about what had happened with Bonnie. Edith arrived early on Sunday, eager to hear about how things had gone. However, she quickly shifted the conversation to discuss Carmen. I remained reserved about my feelings at this point. I doubt any woman would be interested in a young father with 4 mouths to feed and care for, though I might be mistaken about that. Carmen brings over a casserole every Saturday with 2 more months of house arrest. My entertainment options are limited to television or music. When Carmen requested music, she pulled me up to dance. I struggled to prevent my arousal from showing. Unfortunately, she managed to get a reaction out of me. Parker, I'm not ready to jump into another relationship, but it's empowering to know I still have that effect on you. Can you handle taking things slow? Carmen, I think so. My thoughts are all over the place. I'm not sure what I want. Does that make sense? I know you can't understand what it's like, but it will take time. Edith had asked me to look after the kids on weekends. On Tuesday, she asked me to take a seat, Parker. I don't want to control your life, but maybe I should. I had a chat with Carmen's mom last night. They live on the East Coast. She said that Carmen's car had broken down and that she couldn't afford to repair it, given her other expenses. She only had a few $100s left each month. What do you think? Could we take care of Chad and save her the childcare costs? Adam and Chad seem to get along well. It would be a nice thing to do, but I still need your help. How much do the car repairs cost? I feel like I owe her for the casserole she's been bringing over. Thanks, Parker. I'll find out about the car the next morning. Carmen showed up at my doorstep. A lady was sitting in the driver's seat, waving at me. Carmen had a sparkle in her eyes. Thanks, Parker. This means a lot. Not a problem. Carmen, see you later today. I'm fixing your car. It cost about $300. I thought it was worth it. Seeing Carmen every day was an added bonus. Our greetings and farewells now resembled those exchanged by close friends. I was feeling pretty good after my period of house arrest had concluded. I decided to seize the chance to go for a 10-mile jog around the neighborhood. I casually mentioned an idea to Carmen. Could you possibly arrange to have Friday off? I'm thinking of planning a full-day outing for us. Edith can look after the kids. I'd suggest this weekend. But both Edith and Julie have other plans. Sounds great. I'll give you a call later from the office. A few hours later, we had our plans set. My heart was racing with excitement. Friday couldn't have gone any smoother. I picked up Carmen and Chad early after dropping Chad off at my place. While Edith was looking after Parker, we headed to the marina. The 3-hour guided tour gave us some much-needed quality time at the amusement park, which is now open. We spent the following 5 hours hopping from one attraction to another. Eventually, it was time to head back to the hotel. I thought I'd suggest I stay over tonight. How about I stay for the weekend? Once the kids were asleep, I thought about what to do next. I didn't want to seem too eager, but I also didn't want to seem disinterested. I made us drinks and then suggested, shall we watch? I suggested we watch TV in the bedroom. I could tell Carmen was thinking the same thing. We didn't last long on the bed before getting swept up in a passionate conversation. It felt natural. We shared our thoughts openly, and I felt a sense of relief. I'm still on birth control. Are you sure you're free of any diseases? I got tested when everything started and all results were negative, so I'm pretty sure I'm clean. I've never been tested, so you'll have to trust that I'm clean too. I was ready to take it all the way. Yes, I was more than ready, and again after tending to the chickens. Saturday turned out to be a fulfilling day. We spent the day together while the kids were asleep. We didn't have enough car seats, so we got food from an Italian restaurant. Our evening took a different turn as we each tried to improve our communication skills. Carmen's efforts were particularly successful. It was clear that my skills needed the most work. We were having lunch with the children when Carmen's phone rang. It was her mother calling. She answered the call in the living room, away from the kitchen. When she came back, she looked sad. She said, I need to go to my mom. Her dad had a health scare. I also heard that she's in hospital. Could you please get Chad's things ready? I'll be arranging travel. I told her I was sorry and that I'd support her. I shed a tear with her. I think I was crying for her pain as much as for the loss of her presence. She was at the airport in less than 90 minutes. I suppose I was uncertain about. I felt like our relationship was casual with a strong friendship, but was there more to it? A couple of nights and a day of bonding doesn't necessarily imply anything deeper. Yet I couldn't deny my feelings for Carmen went beyond mere companionship. Did she feel the same way, or was I just hoping she did? I needed to have a chat with Carmen. Her flight was on schedule, and she was there for her mom while her dad was in hospital. It wasn't the right time to talk about our relationship. Her dad pulled through, but he's not going to be the same again. He had health issues that left him unable to care for himself. I didn't hear from Carmen much after that. We left each other messages, but it seemed like there was no way to get a hold of her. Edith and Julie noticed I was down and tried to cheer me up. I went on a few more dates, but they were more conventional. I quickly learned to mention my 4 young children up front. I thought there'd be less chance of seeing her, but she sent me a 2-page letter. Her father passed away and she decided to stay on the East Coast. She said she'd enjoyed our time together and wished me well in finding someone new. It's a shame, but I've moved on from Carmen. I got an SUV to fit 4 car seats and another adult. The cashiers at the grocery store were really helpful, making sure I didn't buy anything unsuitable for my family. I'm still hopeful that I'll find love again. I don't want to believe otherwise. A year after Carmen left, Edith found me. She told me Parker had got in touch. I could tell from Carmen's mom Edith's reaction that she wasn't sure how I'd take it. I could tell she was hoping Carmen hadn't burned any bridges. I've always liked Carmen's mom. What's her name again? Edith laughed and said, Parker, you know who I mean. If you're asking if I'd welcome her back without hesitation, 3 days later my heart skipped a beat when I found Carmen waiting for me at home after work. I was really happy to see Carmen waiting for me at home after work. Chad and Adam were fine sharing a room, and so were Carmen and I, with the help of all the grandparents. We're doing a great job of raising 5 wonderful children, even though we're trying to manage on Carmen and my incomes alone. The grandparents help out a lot, too. Purchases that exceed our budget. Bonnie remarried about a year after the divorce was finalized. She still visits, but she's significantly behind on her child support payments to the kids. She's more like a sporadic visitor than a mother figure. They see Nana Edith as their primary maternal figure. Carmen and I opted we're not looking to expand the family any further. 5 kids is enough for us. No charges were ever brought against anyone for the assaults on Bonnie or her partners. Bonnie and her parents are still a bit strange, but I still regard Edith and Roger as the loving grandparents they are during Christmas. 3.5 years after Bonnie left, I was in the kitchen with Edith. I was curious, so I asked about the 2 rings she was wearing. She moved the one on her ring finger and then the other on her pinky. She winked and said, "This one is my wedding band, and this one belongs to my mother." I was surprised by her answer. With a secretive gesture, she placed her index finger to her lips and whispered, "Shush." Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. If you have already done so, feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.